bringing Rainey off the corner.
The drop to Launch the Glasser. They got this one. Rainey. You can't stop the Gator rain. Touchdown, Florida.
It's a huge game, Florida at LSU, and it's less than 30 minutes away, and we have special coverage.
You know, believe it or not, there's not this direct correlation of winning national championships and raising more money to universities. To the contrary, there's a lot of studies that will show you that you lose fundraising advantage sometimes after you won a national championship in a given sport. It's not the direct effect you think it is.
Talk a little bit more about that.
Big money man on the Gators Athletic Association opens up about the $100 million business of Florida sports.
Everybody's making immigration proposals these days. Let me add mine to the mix. Call it the Limbaugh Mall.
And how loud does money talk? Limbaugh makes a rush for the Rams. Hang on, South Florida. We're going beyond the game.
This is Beyond the Game with Rick Horrow.
Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Game. There's really no way to overstate the level of excitement around the state and around the nation generated by the Florida-LSU matchup. We have a couple of exclusive interviews with key Gator insiders coming up you really won't want to miss. But first, here's Josh Samuels with the keys to the game.
And Tim Tebow is down. Tim Tebow is supine. Tim Tebow is shaken up.
If it turns out Tim Tebow misses the first start of his career at the University of Florida, redshirt sophomore John Brantley will get his first start in one of the toughest places to play in the country.
Brantley into the end zone. Touchdown.
The Gators' offense will look a little different with Brantley in there. Brantley's more of a classic drop-back passer and is not as fleet on his feet as Tebow. In mostly mop-up time this season, Brantley is 22 for 30 for 232 yards and 4 touchdowns, as well as 44 rushing yards. Some college football insiders do say Brantley is the second or third best quarterback in the SEC behind Tebow.
Tebow, little play fake. Wide open down the middle. Hernandez, touchdown.
One major positive in this game time decision is the fact that LSU will have to prepare to face both Brantley and Tebow, so the Tigers won't be able to use one game plan all week.
Back with us for another week, our crack panel, former Dolphin Troy Stratford. Making his first appearance on our panel, Larry Sugarman, owner of the Palm Beach Golf Center. And Stone Age NFL player Rick Davis. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and sorry, Rick.
That's okay.
Let's start with Troy. Last week, you talked about being groggy on the field a number of times, and you talked about Tebow and his concussion. One shot. Should he play? Should he not play?
Absolutely not. Listen, I'm not a doctor, but I did stay in no. I just think that it was a major concussion that Tim Tebow suffered out there in that game last week, and I don't think enough time has gone by. It is a very long season, and I don't think that the Gators should actually risk the opportunity of him coming back too soon, suffering another concussion, and then losing him for the season. So I say sit Tim Tebow.
Troy Stratford's amateur attempt at endorsement. Now we talk to Rick Davis, who played at Alabama low those many years ago. Your take on the Tebow incident?
I agree with Troy. I don't think he should play. It's a great atmosphere. Death Valley on a Saturday night. It's a great place to play. We played there in 1973, my junior year at Alabama. They were 9-0 and we were 9-0, and it was just an electric atmosphere. But it was one of those things where going in as a team, we were excited about playing there, and I think Florida will be the same way. I think the team will be fired up to play in that kind of an atmosphere. My only question is how will John Brantley, how will he react to the atmosphere and it being his first start in a big game for the Florida Gators?
Well, as they say on TV, we'll just have to see. And Larry Sugarman, with your vast sports knowledge of Florida sports, what happens if the Gators lose? Do they still have a shot at the national championship?
Well, I believe they do, Rick, and that is because 3 of the top 4 teams right now, as it sits, are SEC teams. You got Florida, Alabama, and LSU at number 4. So even if Florida loses tonight, they would still probably get a chance to play in the championship game. So I really think that the national championship does run through the SEC, and if Florida loses tonight but wins throughout the rest of the season, then I think they do have a chance at getting back into the championship game.
And more insight from our panel a little later on. But next, Danny Ponce is an attorney, a University of Florida trustee and the chairman of the Athletic Association's Finance Committee, and he's one of the top university money raisers anywhere. So heading into tonight's game, we thought he'd be the perfect guy to talk to about boosters, what kind of job Athletic Director Jeremy Foley is doing, and the $100 million business they call the University of Florida Sports.
You know, we probably have 14,000 plus contributors to athletics at the University of Florida. That's everybody from people who give $100 to people who give $100,000 a year. Collectively, last year, that was $28 million roughly that was contributed to athletics from fundraising efforts. And that's an annual flow of dollars. So when you have that kind of a base, you've got a great season ticket base, you're doing very, very well. You know, it's a great revenue flow. The real key part is how you manage your expenses. There's lots of schools that generate lots of money, but they take on more than they can do, and they think it's an endless supply of money. And I think we've done a good job of managing that.
Your president says that Urban Meyer ought to be paid a bit more. Just an offhanded comment. A few weeks later, the announcement that he's the highest paid coach in the SEC. And 4 of the top 10 coaches all over SEC guys, so it's a television contract, clearly. But give me your take on Urban Meyer. Is he making the right amount of money now? What's your thought about paying a football coach that kind of money?
I'll give you a cute story. Way back a long time ago, when Bill Elmore was the chairman of the Athletic Association Board, we had a debate one day. This is back in probably the late 70s, whether or not we should hire a proven coach in a given sport at $52,000 or hire the unproven assistant at $47,000. I voted for the proven national championship coach. Elmore said we can't afford that. My, haven't we come a long way since then? You got to pay, you have to pay what the market says you need to pay. Urban Meyer is, without a doubt, in my opinion, and I've been around him a lot since he's been here, the finest single coach in college football today. That doesn't mean there's not a lot of the great ones, but he is, in my judgment, the finest. You must pay that man what he does. He delivers quality product on the field, quality job with the kids. The success of the program is obviously speaks for itself. That's what it takes to have Urban Meyer, and assuming you can afford it, then that's what you need to do. Whether or not he's the highest paid, the second highest paid, the third highest paid, normal folks will all agree that he's being paid a lot of money.
What about women's sports? There are a lot of schools that aren't able to fund, and they fund up to the minimum. Tell us how you all work.
Well, we're very proud of what we've done and what our obligations and our compliances with men versus women's athletics. As I mentioned earlier, just this year will be our first start off of women's lacrosse. That's a $15 million investment in facilities. We have signed 12. We had 12 scholarships. I think we've signed 24 women because you don't have to give total full scholarships. And you're seeing that. We've been very gender conscious since the days that those rules came about, and it's a balancing act. The irony today is that the University of Florida has more female students than it has male students. It's almost a 60-40 kind of a ratio in the incoming classes. So although it's only 52-48 or maybe 53-47 on the overall student population. So what you're seeing is more and more women, which means we will have more and more women's sports.
Let's talk about the revenue side for a couple of minutes. And one of the big controversies as a lawyer, big litigation anyway, is the likeness of a player and what rights the NCAA and the institutions have versus players. And I understand we can't get into the details of that, but give me your overall kind of 30,000-foot take.
It's always going to be a balancing act. I mean, you know, today with the video games and the likenesses that are used of athletes, you know, you end up in a situation where college sports obviously has become a big financial enterprise. Student athlete receives a scholarship, receives a modest income of dollars as far as reimbursing for food or paying for food on the road, whatever. They're not professional athletes, they're getting an education. That is the law, that's the rule that we live by. That's what the NCAA says we do, that's what the Congress says we do, so we do it. You know, there's no question if you go down to the Gator sports outlets in this town, the number of jerseys that get sold with the number 15 on the back is a pretty big number. And I think Tim Tebow, if you talk to him about it, will tell you that he acknowledges and knows that. But he knows that there will be a payday for him someday down the road, be it in professional sports or be it in his calling with his Christian beliefs and religion.
Does Tim Tebow, in your estimation, have any rights to any of the dollars that are generated here, or is that all in the future once he becomes a pro?
Well, I think it's all in the future once he becomes a pro.
How much do you think, it's hard to do, has Tim Tebow's Heisman generated for the university economically?
That's impossible to measure. I mean, we've had 3 Heisman Trophy winners, and Steve Spurrier and Danny Werfel, and Tim Tebow. Hopefully Tim will win another one this year. And you can't measure that. You can't measure that.
Not so fast about winning another Heisman, but Danny Pond sure is an incredible businessman talking about that program. Larry Sugarman, South Florida businessman, talk a little bit about your perspective and perception of college athletics.
Well, it's obviously gotten so big over the years. Like Danny Pond said, $47,000, $52,000 a few years ago was considered big bucks back then. As long as a head coach is successful and is a proven head coach and is a winner, and that's what university programs are all about. If he can continue to drive that university towards national championships, money will be raised. It excites the fan base, and they will give if they see a coach who is dedicated, who is one that can lead them to the promised land. I was out in Arizona recently and was starting to hear rumblings about state legislatures looking at coaches' salaries. So who knows where all this is going to go, and who knows if the states step in, but it should be very interesting to see what happens in the future.
Rick Davis, it's an ultimate buzzkill, I suspect, to talk about University of Alabama right before a Gator game, but the arms race in the SEC, we only have a few seconds, but talk to us about that.
Yeah, a lot of this money that's being raised is used to build facilities, and if you go around to the different campuses in the Southeastern Conference, you see it Florida, you see it Alabama, you see Tennessee, Baton Rouge. They have huge stadiums. They have tremendous weight rooms and coaches' offices and locker rooms. That's where a lot of the money is going, because you need those things to attract the recruits. Recruiting is vital to the success of the programs, and you can attract the recruits with the facilities. So that's where a lot of this money that's being raised is being spent.
Troy Stratford, BC, 50, 60 million in revenue. Gators well over 100 million. How do you feel about that?
Hard to compete with that. The Gators, they spend more money on like buildings. That's what Boston College operates on. But, you know, somehow, some way, they get it done up there at Boston College, even funding some of the women's sports on campus, as well as some of the other athletic things that are going on campus. So they're doing fine right where they are.
Troy Stratford's home number is, as chairman of the ad hoc contribution fund, there it is. Stick around for our one-on-one with Gator Athletic Director Jeremy Foley. And the bid to buy the Rams. Could you find a more controversial NFL owner? I think not. And later, our game predictions from our panel. Which one of these guys looks for the Gators to lose? Unbelievable.